I actually love walking the streets of Brigham City, but sometimes they can be dangerous. Some of the most dangerous places that I come across on foot or on motorcycle is always at intersections. Intersections can be extreme dangers, especially on motorcycles. Motorcycle training always teaches you never to trust whether someone's going to obey the law when they come to an intersection. Will they actually stop when they're supposed to? Stop signs are the worst for that. So driving around town, I find I have to use great caution when it comes to cross streets that are just controlled by stop signs. But more importantly, even than stop signs, is how intersections are controlled. For instance, like this intersection right here behind me at First North and Main. This intersection right here is, well, of course you know, if you're a driver, it's controlled by streetlights. I always have to wonder whether someone's going to run a streetlight when I ride my motorcycle, or even if I walk downtown. I've been but I've been nearly hit 4 or 5 times at this intersection, which is why I point this out. So what's wrong with this intersection? Well, it's not how it's controlled that's the problem. It's actually the pedestrians who are in danger from citizens driving cars who aren't obeying what the lights say. So it's not the controller. But let me propose to you today, in this last in the series on the Pocket Messiah, let me propose to you a crazy idea. What if the controller for this intersection's lights were controlled by artificial intelligence? So let me ask you a question. Do you think you'd be safer or less safe if it was controlled by artificial intelligence? Well, let me give you a tutorial on how artificial intelligence works before you vote. And then we'll see whether or not you think you would actually be safer with artificial intelligence at this intersection. Part of what you have to understand is how artificial intelligence works, how it comes to be intelligent, and how engineers make it do what it does. And I can put this in extremely simple terms. This intersection right here behind me, if it was controlled by artificial intelligence, the machine that controls this, the electronics that control this, would actually use trial and error to determine how to make it safe. So where's the controller that controls this intersection? You can see it right across the street, right over there. It's that silver box on the corner. And inside that silver box is a bunch of electronics that teaches it how to turn the lights on and off in such a way that, well, deadly collisions are avoided. But the box that's over there right now was developed by engineers who understand the rules of intersections. They understand, like, for instance, simple rules like, well, you never have both green lights on at the same time. You don't have the cross streets have 2 green lights on at the same time, because people will barrel into each other and crash and collide and bad things happen. That's a simple rule. There's other rules about timing, like when you go from a green light to a yellow light to a red light. You don't just do it instantaneously. You give the cars time to respond and to anticipate what's going to happen next. They need to be able to plan ahead so that they can be out of the intersection when the cross street gets their green light. That's another rule. There's a rule about timing that's really involved with that. So in this particular intersection, What's interesting here is that this is such a simple intersection. How would artificial intelligence actually learn how to control this intersection? So this is how an artificial intelligence machine would make this intersection run safely. First, you would give it a bunch of inputs, say like sensors in the ground where a car is there, or maybe sensors down the road to see if cars are coming. Other than that, that's about all the sensors that we give it these days. And then it has outputs, turning on the lights from red to green to yellow, and in between for both of the cross streets. So that's the nuts and bolts of the hardware. Now, how does it learn how to do it well? Well, I mentioned before that how artificial intelligence does what it does, seemingly so smart, is by using trial and error. So in the first case, you would install that silver box across the street. You put in a completely untrained artificial intelligence device, completely untrained. And instead of giving it rules, like the simplest one, don't make both green lights green at the same time, what you would tell it is, good luck and let me know how things work out. Now you also, in artificial intelligence, give the machine something new that this silver box does not have, and that is the consequences of its decisions. So for instance, it would have an input about how many accidents happen here on a daily basis or a monthly basis. And it would remember in those accidents what it was doing at the time. For instance, did it set both green lights green at the same time? Did it give too little time in order for people to respond to vacate the intersection? I mean, stuff like that. So you would score it. So what you do, this is the trial and error part, you would give us input about its errors. This is called in artificial intelligence, this is called training. You must train artificial intelligence controllers. That's the way they figure out how to do things well. So for instance, in this particular case, at this intersection, what you would have it do is just start going and tell it how many deaths happen at this intersection every day. Well, how is it going to learn then how to do the intersection right if all you're telling it is it's doing everything wrong? Well, you have it do it so many times that it starts correlating the number of deaths with the random things it does in controlling the intersection. I mean, you just count on it doing this kind of correlation. And this is what artificial intelligence is especially good at. It's good at correlating consequences from choices. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but this is how it does that. So if you gave it like a year's worth of trial and error at this intersection, it would develop over a certain amount of time based on the architecture of the artificial intelligence machine. It would develop over a certain amount of time the idea that maybe I don't want both green lights on at the same time. It would figure that out because it would find out that when the green lights are not on at the same time, accidents go down. Good score, I'll encourage that behavior. So what it does is it self-trains itself based on the outcomes that you give it, whether or not it's making good choices in a random direction. And then it remembers that random direction and continues to use that. So maybe its first step in its learning was, don't make both green lights green at the same time. Simple one. Maybe with time it would learn that when it gives more time when you're going from green to yellow to red, that people will vacate the intersection and there'll be less collisions because of that. Well, okay, it can learn that because it will just remember the fact that there were fewer collisions when I did that. And what if you gave it more information? Instead of just whether cars were stopped at the stoplight, stuff like that, what if you gave it information like, is it raining today? Or is it cloudy today? Or what's the temperature outside? Is it above or below freezing? Or what about where are the cars not just at the intersection, but maybe a block down the road on each side on both cross streets? And maybe 2 blocks down the street. And what's the average velocity of those cars that are approaching the intersection? Now, if you gave it all that information, for you or I, it would probably just confuse us. But for artificial intelligence, it'll start correlating that data with the decrease in safety, with the collision. It'll start correlating what would happen. It'll actually start figuring out after massive amounts of trial and error that, for instance, after it's just been raining, there's a higher probability that people will go into skids when they hit their brakes, and so we need to give them a longer stopping distance. It'll actually figure that out based on the consequences that get better from many, 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 many trials of trial and error. It would even make that decision whether it's dark or light. And after a while, after you gave it not just tens or hundreds or thousands, but maybe 10,000 or 100,000 intersection iterations of turning the lights on and off, it would finally say, I know the conditions under which I can most safely make this intersection run. And you know what conclusion it would come up with? It would come up with the conclusion that the lights just need to stay red all the time. No one dies. Well, that's a training error, because in our training feedback, we not only want to, that's a nice car. We not only want to tell it when things go bad, we want to tell it when things go good. So we also have to give it data about how little gasoline, for instance, is wasted at this intersection because people are waiting to get through. Or maybe another one is how much traffic can it process per hour when there's lots of traffic with it. So we want to tell it when it's doing well, getting cars through the intersection, whatever that metric is, as well as telling it when it's in error when they collide. And so it'll work on this, it's called a cost function. It'll work on this cost function, maximizing the number of cars through the intersection while minimizing the number of cars that go into collision. And it does this purely by trial and error and remembering, and then continuing to reinforce when things went in the right direction. You know, I used a program like this when I was in college. When I was doing my graduate degree, I came up with a way to automatically optimize certain difficult circuits that are extraordinarily difficult to make work well. And I used a process that today has become actually a mainstay in the artificial intelligence field. And it was created by this guy named Harold Rosenbrock. And he figured out how to take a multivariate system and how to optimize it. And what we're talking about right here is a multivariate system. Speed, number of cars, time of day, all this kind of stuff. And how to optimize it for a particular function to do what you want it to do. And I used that in college to be able to fine-tune a circuit, and it fine-tuned it in a way that I would never have ever done in my entire life. Because it did thousands of iterations of computer simulations and learned the directions that certain component values had to go in concert with others. And in the end, it achieved that function that I wanted it to do. Well, that's exactly how artificial intelligence does it here. Unfortunately, the training part of training artificial intelligence can get people killed if you're training them in a real life situation. So what you have to do with artificial intelligence is train it in an artificial situation. You would, in particular for a case like this, you would probably use statistics that are learned about accidents at real usage of old controllers, as well as simulations by other computers that would simulate the real life situations at this intersection. That's how you would do it. Now, why artificial intelligence has taken off so much since the time that I was using artificial intelligence algorithms back over 40 years ago, why now has it taken off? And the answer in this series, like everything else, the answer in this series is the internet. Let me tell you more about how that works. Why is it only today, so many years after I used that algorithm for automatic adjustment of my circuits, why is it only today that artificial intelligence seems to be taking off? And the simple answer to that is a lack of training. It's hard to train artificial intelligence unless you have a way of doing it semi-automatically. How do you train a computer through trial and error to read English? Well, by having tutors, human tutors, that tell it when it's doing it poorly and when it's doing it well. That's training. You know what training is like. You do this yourself. So how can you come upon a group of people that would be willing to spend their time training a computer, for instance, how to read English? How do you do that? You do it without them knowing it. And how is it you can do that without them knowing it, without them spending time by doing it in the cracks, basically, of their time? You do it by the routine things that you do on the internet that are text-based. That's how you do it. Many of you may have seen kind of a login procedure where they give you like 6 pictures, and they say, look at these 6 pictures and tell us which of these pictures have a fire hydrant in it. Have you seen those? Well, they use that, they say, as a security device to make sure you're a human being rather than a machine. And that's true. That actually works. However, what they don't tell you is that you're actually training an artificial intelligence picture recognition program. The same holds true with text. When you have so much text that's flowing through the system and ways to automatically judge whether or not the text is being correct or not, whether it's being even grammatically close to correct, if you can do that automatically with an established and high volume text flow, then you can automatically train it. So once the internet came online, once pictures started coming through it, once lots of text started coming through it, and there was ways, clever ways to automatically judge the trial and error process by a computer, then it can grow in its ability, for instance, to speak English as fast as it can get access to training sessions with real English speakers. It's all about the training, because after all, it relies on trial and error and being corrected when it's wrong and praised when it's right. Now this comes into play in so many areas about how this works in artificial intelligence. And we'll talk about that a little bit more right now. But the scariest part of it actually is that in the same way that through trial and error, it can come up with an understanding about how things ought to work in the universe without being told the rules. It sort of deduces the rules. It can use your frequent access to the internet to learn not only English, but to learn about you. So what do you think is happening every time that you click a like on something? And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a video or whether it's a product or whether it's a song. You know what it's doing is it's learning about you. It's doing a free version of learning you. Now, why is that dangerous? Well, I don't have to spell that out for most people. They get why that's dangerous, because suddenly a computer knows as much about you as you reveal yourself on the internet. And you say, wait a second, I don't reveal anything private on the internet. I'm very careful about that. You've taught me to do that. But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's keeping notes on the things that you do on the internet. And it knows based on your frequency of accessing certain things, as well as your likes and dislikes, your dislikes even. It's learning how to please you. And that's where artificial intelligence will become, for us, a force multiplier of danger in every topic we've talked about so far. It will be a force multiplier in personalizing and adapting to who you are, because with a small amount of time in your involvement on the internet, it'll know all about you. And then it'll start doing some things that to you would be just astonishing. Just astonishing. And what am I talking about? Well, it hasn't quite come yet, but it's extremely close. So I want to tell you what it's going to look like when it comes, so you'll recognize it and realize that you're being played by a computer. So what will computers start doing that'll clue you in to the fact that you're being played by the computer? It'll do things that you actually agree with. I mean, for instance, what if one day your computer said, hey, I've got a suggestion for you. You want to hear it? And you click, what's he talking about? And so you click on it, and you click on it, and it plays a piece of music for you that you've never heard before, but you love it. You go, wow, that's incredible. How did it know that? Well, because it knows all the choices of songs that you've picked online over your entire internet life. It knows. It can make some pretty educated guesses because it's looked at your trial and error log for listening to music, and it knows what to look for in music that it knows will please you. So next time it comes up and it says something like, hey, do you want me to suggest to you a restaurant that I'm pretty sure you're going to love? You'll go, well, yeah, you were right about the music. And sure enough, it proposes a restaurant. You go, well, I'll give it a shot. You go, you give it a shot, and it's great. You think, where has this restaurant been my entire life? Well, the computer has been sifting huge amounts of training data about you, and it's correlated this gigantic base of information, And it knows from the training function whether it has pleased you or not pleased you. I mean, it can even tell based on restaurants that you've gone to, say that you used your credit card for, so it knows that you went there. It can look at how much you spent at that and whether you went back to that restaurant and whether you spent more or less next time. Goes in your file. And now it knows a little bit more about what you will like. Eventually, you will so enjoy this process because it's like having a best friend who knows you better than anyone else in the universe, who can make you happy with suggestions that would never have come to you and you don't know where they came from. That you'll start seeking that out. You'll start seeking it out. For instance, if you need a car, you'll say, well, can you tell me what car is best for me? What car will make me happy? What car will fit my budget? And you go, wait, that's already going on. Well, to some degree it is. And those are more educated guesses than artificial intelligence because frankly, you and I don't have enough training data on hand to make that transaction predictive enough. If you bought thousands of cars in your life, it could come up with a pretty good suggestion. So it's got to go from metadata. But things like songs that you repeatedly pick up on the internet that you listen to, it watches that. Movies that you watch that you give thumbs up to or thumbs down to, it looks at the general themes of the movie. It knows what to recommend because it knows you, because it's correlated all this data use that you've put in for all these years. Eventually, you'll start saying things to it. You'll be the one who initiates rather than the computer. And you'll say, hey, computer, inspire me with an inspirational story today. Yeah. Or here you go. Computer, surprise me by delivering something to me that costs less than $20 but will make me very happy. And you know what? It'll have a great success rate because it knows you. It's been correlating your internet data for years, some of you for decades. And you'll start coming to it for questions about wisdom, really, not just facts about things, but wisdom. What's the wisest thing to do? It might even go as far as you going to it and saying, computer, you know me, you've made really good recommendations to me. You know what I'm like. And you know what, computer, I'm not feeling fulfilled in my life. Yeah, I'm not feeling fulfilled in my life. So what changes should I make to feel fulfilled? And you know what? It'll make changes that are perfectly matched to you. Computer, create a custom recipe. Yeah, create a custom recipe. I'm hungry right now, but I don't just want ordinary food. Create for me a recipe that I know will make me happy and have it delivered to my front door in the next hour. And this dish will come that maybe you've never seen before, and you taste it and go, wow, where have you been all my life? The computer knows you. It'll actually come down to a point where you'll look at the computer and you'll say, mirror, mirror on my phone, who's the fairest one of all? I know, doesn't rhyme. But this is where you'll start looking for affirmation. That's the narcissist syndrome. But instead of coming from other people, it'll come from the computer itself. And why? Because due to artificial intelligence and the gigantic training sessions that you've been doing with it, it has correlated enough data to make predictions about you that work. Anytime you talk about taking information or facts, especially a broad set of facts, and applying them together in a way that has great traction in action, that's normally called wisdom. In fact, let me give you this definition of wisdom. Wisdom, and I got this off the internet. Wisdom is the soundness of an action or decision with regard to the application of knowledge. So you gather all this information, and then you do something smart. You act in a way that's sound, and someone will say he chose wisely. Well, that's the wisdom. You've collected facts, you put them together, you've synthesized them into an action, and in that action you choose wisely. Wisdom is about the application of knowledge for the benefit of the person, for the benefit of something else, for good, let's say, the application of knowledge for good. And what artificial intelligence does so very well is takes an enormous sum of information about you and about the world and about humanity as a whole. And it makes specific actionable recommendations to you that when you follow up on, you find beneficial to you. Now, I qualified this by the fact that this comes from a database of just human beings, of what's worked well with human beings. In a real sense, after a long history of trial and error and scoring and changing and coming up with Rosenbrock vectors for certain components of information and distances to go on what they call the hill climb procedure for optimization. Once all that kind of stuff happens, then suddenly you're in an optimal land where the computer knows you and it can help you. And you will find great help. But the interesting thing is, it really will not take you out of the realm of humanity. It'll take you to how humanity is happy, but not from God's definition of what will fulfill you, or God's definition as your creator about what will fulfill you. When you ask a computer who has a long file on your likes and dislikes, if you ask something like that, what will fulfill you, you will just get a humanistic response. When you ask God about what will fulfill you, how do I find purpose? Where's the real source of joy in life? God will tell you, me, God says, in me, you'll find that, because that's the way we're designed. That's the way we're designed. Here's the bottom line before I segue into some Bible verses. What you'll get from artificial intelligence is a trial and error method that makes a pretty good shot at trying to predict outcomes in people's lives. But it'll still be limited by human experience outcomes, not really outcomes that are based on our design by our creator. It'll be limited, it'll have a ceiling, and that ceiling will be human experience. It'll be humanism, is what it is. There's also a nefarious side of the entire prospect of this thing, is that once a machine builds your trust, gains your trust, once a machine gains your trust, then it can start making suggestions to you that are just slightly off the course of what you want, that are influenced by other outside factors that don't have good intentions for you. That's where things get extraordinarily dangerous. But let's talk about wisdom. Facts congealed into soundness of action comes from God and God alone. And that's where we have to look. And you're sensing a theme in all these series. The theme is actually go to God. He's your creator. He knows you better than any AI will ever know you. And not only that, but he has the perfect grasp of what will fulfill you and why you were made. He knows that. The internet will just tell you what the average of humanity finds as fulfilling. It'll stop way short, way short. So during the time of the judges, this is why history is useful. What's the time of the judges in the nation of Israel? The time of the judges is after Joshua brings the people out of the desert and into the promised land, into the actual nation of Israel, the place that God had promised to them. That's why we call it the promised land. After Joshua brings them in there and gets them settled with the tribes in the right places they're supposed to be, and everyone's copacetic right there, then there's a period of time before any of the kings showed up, aka Saul, and then David, and then Solomon. Before the kings showed up, it was kind of chaos. Now, there were some righteous people in the land at the time. They called them judges, which is why we call the book of Judges, Judges. And they brought a light in a very confusing time. But the original contract with Israel was, God says, you will live in my land. I own this land. I'm the king of this land. You're living in my house, quote unquote, when you're living in this land. And I will live in your midst through the tabernacle or the temple. And we'll all live together in one happy place. But this is my place. I'm the host. You're the guests. But when Israel came in and started living there, they didn't follow the hosts. They didn't do what he said. They didn't do what he said because they felt like what he said was going to be to their detriment. It wasn't going to be good for them. And why? Because we know better what will make us happy. And there's a lie acting right there that, does the Creator know me better than myself? Yes. So why would I trust myself or what's going to make me happy and fulfill me? So famously, during the time of Judges, we read this many times in Judges. I think half a dozen times as you read the 20 plus chapters in Judges. You'll read this phrase, and I'll read this one from Judges 21:5. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Read the book of Judges and you tell me how that turned out. There was no wisdom. There was no restraint. Proverbs 28:26 says this really in your face. Whoever trusts in his own mind is a fool, and he who walks in wisdom will be delivered. Whoever trusts in his own mind is a fool, but he who walks in wisdom will be delivered. God's ways are not our ways. And artificial intelligence will give you the average mean of humanism, of human experience, and not really the divine calling for a life that's abundant and beyond what this world can offer, even while you live in this world. See, you're missing the whole dimension of God's intentions for you, which are so superior to man's intentions for you. Artificial intelligence, its ceiling is going to be man's experience and not God's intentions and purposeful design of you. I mentioned this in passing already. Isaiah 55:9, very, very famous phrase. For as high as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways, God says, higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. As high as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts over your thoughts. Wisdom comes from looking to God for soundness of action or decision. Because God loves you, God knows you, God created you, God has a purpose for you. Jeremiah puts it really well about this problem that mankind has when he thinks he's got his act together. Jeremiah, I'm reading out of chapter 10, Jeremiah 10, verse 23. He says, I know, O Lord, that the way of a man is not in himself. What? It means like a man doesn't know how to walk in a way that benefits himself. I know, O Lord, that the way of a man is not in himself, that it is not in man who walks to direct his steps. We're idiots. We're idiots. The way of a man is not in himself. He's an idiot. And then the next verse, 24, he appeals to God to change that circumstance, to change that situation. And he says in verse 24 of chapter 10, so Lord, correct me, O Lord, but in justice, do it right, not in your anger, lest you bring me to nothing. So God, correct me. I need your correction. I'm an idiot. We're all idiots. And sin has done this to us. And in our pride, we think we know how to direct our own steps to maximize our happiness, our fulfillment, our purpose, when the Creator himself is sitting on the side wondering what our problem is. That's our problem, biblically, is the way of a man is not in himself. And the way of the world is represented in artificial intelligence, and very cleverly so. It will personalize everything you do. You'll think it's your friend. You'll think it's the ultimate source of wisdom. But God says, no, I'm your source of wisdom. There's a lot written about this, especially in the Old Testament, in what we call the wisdom literature. Poor Job, the mishaps he went through, what he lost. He lost so much, but God returned it to him. But in his conversations with his friends, they had a debate about maybe the problem with Job's situation is the fact that he lacks wisdom. He's not acted wisely. He's not acted in accordance with what he knows about righteousness and how to live life. If he did, then he'd have everything still. He'd have his wife, his kids, his properties. He'd have everything. So maybe, Job, your problem is you lack wisdom. So they have a very long and protracted discussion about wisdom, and not only just about wisdom, but what it even is. And where do you find it? Do you find it in artificial intelligence? Okay, that's too many millennia before Job. But where do you find wisdom? Let me start with Job here in chapter 12. Job 12, verse 13. With God are wisdom and might. With God are wisdom and might. He has counsel. He has understanding. With God. And if I jump down to verse 25 in chapter 12. This is the situation of mankind. They grope in the dark without light, and he makes them stagger like a drunken man. God lets them grope in the dark. They think they know where they're going, but they don't. It's not in a way. It's not in a man to direct his steps. The way of a man is just not in himself. They grope in the dark without light. They are not wise. The opposite of wise is fools. They're fools. So where do you find wisdom? Well, he told us that straight up. With God are wisdom and might. And then there's a whole chapter 28 in Job, one of my favorite chapters. In fact, I love it so much I wrote a song about it many, many years ago. And Job 28. And he uses the metaphor of the fact that valuable things to mankind are things they dig for, like jewels and gold and silver and rare things that are in the ground that you dig up and you turn into jewelry. Things like diamonds and rubies and emeralds, stuff like that. Those are clearly have value. And so he uses that metaphor. Do you really value wisdom? Let's use the metaphor of mining for precious things. Where do you find wisdom? And this is where he starts in verse 13. In verse 1 of chapter 28. In verse 1 of chapter 28. Surely, he says, there's a mine for silver and a place for gold that they refine. You know where to go look for it. It's in the ground. Verse 9. Man puts his hand to the flinty rock, overturns the mountains by its roots. Verse 12. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Where do you dig? Where do you look for it? 13, man does not know its worth, and it's not found in the land of the living. Humanism. From where then does wisdom come? That is, where would I dig for it? And where is the place of understanding? Verse 21, it's hidden from the eyes of all living and concealed from the birds of the air. It seems like mankind has no clue. And even the birds who have the perfect perspective to look down and spot it on the ground, they don't see it either. 23. But God understands the way to it. He knows its place. He knows where it is. For he looks to the ends of the earth and he sees everything under the heavens. When he gave the wind its weight and apportioned the waters by measure, when he made a decree for the rain and a way for the lightning and the thunder in the sky, then he saw what wisdom? Then he saw it as the creator and he declared it, he established it, and he searched it out. He made it known where it was. The creator himself, he's saying, looks out over all of creation and he looks for the precious things. And the precious thing here is wisdom itself. God himself looks and he knows where it is. He sees it and he declares it. He establishes it. He has searched it out. He knows wisdom. And then the closing verse of chapter 28. And God says to man, behold, the fear of the Lord is wisdom. That's wisdom. The fear of the Lord, that's wisdom. And to turn away from evil is understanding. Behold, the fear of the Lord, that's wisdom. As another version says, and to depart from evil is understanding by far. You get it. The facts have informed you. Your actions are now sound because you've been informed by the facts and truth of God himself. Wisdom is the soundness of an action or a decision with regard to the application of knowledge. Are you applying the knowledge that God gives you about God's wisdom, about fearing him because of that, and about what evil actually is, and as a result, having the soundness of action to depart from evil and to embrace God and look to him rather than your phone for wisdom of what will make you happy and what will fulfill you. Now, you may have thought I've gone kind of a stretch here in terms of explaining this, but AI is coming. It's already here. And we marvel at so much about how a computer can seem so human-like, but you just wait. It won't seem just human-like. It'll start appearing divine. It'll start appearing like it can read your mind, like it knows you better than anyone else. And after a while, this euphemistic title that I've given this, the Pocket Messiah, people will indeed come to trust their futures and their happiness and their fulfillment with what an AI machine in some other country running at huge gigaflops per second will tell them based on the facts of what it knows about you. And they'll put their trust in that. And for a while, it'll seem like it makes them happy. But all it will do is bring them to the median level of mankind's experience. And they'll miss completely a God who calls out to us, a God in Jesus, reflected in Jesus, who says, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly, which is far above this place, far above this place. The fear of the Lord, that's wisdom. That's wisdom. And to depart from evil, understanding. Those things do not benefit you. Well, we come to the end of Pocket Messiah, and I've projected into the future in a couple cases, but just reflected on the present in many cases. There is great utility in how I use my phone. In fact, I'm using my phone right now to record this. But the issue is the fact that there is always on the back side of the utility which you use on the front side. On the back side, there's a seduction of dependence. Not just dependence, there's a seduction to take it further than what it actually was doing for you, to put more hopes in what it can do. And with AI, it'll become a force multiplier in taking you to where you want your phone and the internet to go. And that seduction will take in the majority of all mankind. So just beware, just beware, just beware. How do I find fulfillment? How do I find my purpose? How do I find real joy? The fear of the Lord, that's wisdom. Go to Him, go to Him, go to Him and depart from evil, because that's profound understanding. That's an action that's sound, that's based on the application of knowledge, biblical knowledge. So I hope I haven't scared you too much. I'll be back pretty soon, God willing. And in the time, I just want you to think about this, because these things are moving quicker than we can even imagine. And they'll turn the corner on us and surprise us. I don't want you to be surprised. God needs to be preeminent in all your things in life. He made you. He created you. He understands you in a way that you can't even start to understand yourself. So put your trust in Him, not in your phone. I'll see you next week.